I hope the PPT is visible for you and I'm gonna share it. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I will take a quick revision and I will start today's lecture. So today I will discuss about precipitation reactions particularly. So I will discuss about precipitation reactions. Okay. So today's topic will be precipitation reactions. So before that, I will do a quick revision on antigen antibody reactions. So previously we discussed about the uses of antibodies. Okay. So antibodies we have two uses. One is in vivo uses and in vitro uses. So the in vivo uses of antigen antibody reactions include they will kill pathogens, they will participate in anaphylactic reactions, they will immobilize the pathogens, they will even neutralize the pathogens. Whereas in vitro uses include for epidemiological studies, for identifying the diagnostic diseases, and for not only for pathogens, we can also able to detect the hormones or any other antigenic markers in the body. So these are the in vitro uses of antigen antibody reactions. Then I had discussed about the advantages of antigen antibody reactions. So some of the advantages of antigen antibody reactions include they require less time to perform. Very low sample can be enough. Very even 1 to 2 microliter of sample is also enough to do the test and easy to perform, and a large number of samples can be performed within a small amount of time, and also it needs less experience for doing the test. So these are the major advantages of the antigen antibody reactions. Then we discussed about the characteristics of antigen antibody reactions. So coming to the characteristics or properties of antigen antibody reactions, the first one is the antigen. So a single antigen can only bind with single antibody. This is the first property. Okay. A single antigen will bind with only one antibody, but it cannot bind with more than one antibody. Okay. A single antigen will bind with only one antibody. So that is the first property. Then second property is antigen antibody reactions are highly specific in their nature. Okay. That means malaria antibody only binds with malaria antigen, influenza antibody only binds with influenza. So they are always specific in nature. So antigen antibody reactions are specific in nature. Then third point is only surface antigens will participate in the antigen antibody reaction. Only surface antigens participates. Then fourth property includes all antigen antibody reactions are reversible. That means after binding an antigen with antibody, the antigen can able to be removed. We can able to remove that antigen. So that is why all reactions are reversible reactions. Then the strength of the binding of antigen to the antibody depends upon affinity and avidity. So affinity means it is the level of attraction between antigen antibody is called as affinity, whereas avidity means it is the strength of binding of antigen towards the antigen is called as avidity. So usually IgM will have more avidity compared to IgG. Okay, so that this is the concept of affinity and avidity. Then we discussed about the valency. So the valency of a IgG is 2, the valency of IgA will be 4, and the valency of IgM will be 10, or they are pentavalent, this is a divalent, and this is monovalent. So this is the valency of antibodies. Then I discussed about other concept, which is only full antigen or full antibody can participate in antigen antibody reaction, but not partial. Partial antigen or partial antibody cannot participate in antigen antibody reactions. We need complete antibodies or complete antigens for a proper reaction. If it is only a partial antigen, means partial antigen is called hapten. In order to make the partial antigen complete, we will add some substances called adjuvants, and adjuvants will make the partial antigen to complete. After adding adjuvant, it can participate in the reaction. So these are the major properties of antigen antibody reactions. Is this clear for everyone? Is antigen antibody reactions clear for everyone in students in online?
Yes,
Any
yes,
more
yes.
doubts in this? No, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So let me proceed to the next topic. Then I discussed about the reactions. So typically, when an antigen binds with antibody, we will get two types of reactions. Either we will get agglutination reaction or we will get precipitation reaction. So what is the difference between agglutination reaction and precipitation reaction? In order to understand these two, First, you should know the types of antibodies, antigens. So here we have two types of antigens. If the antigen is very large, then it is called as particulate antigen. If the antigen is very small, then it is called soluble antigen. If antibodies binds with an particulate antigen, then the reaction is called as agglutination. If large antigen bind with antibody means that is called agglutination reaction. If small antigen binds with antibody means that is called precipitation reaction or soluble antigen. Soluble antigen results in precipitation reaction and a large particulate antigen results in agglutination reaction. One of the example for agglutination reaction is blood grouping. So blood grouping is one classical example for agglutination reaction. Then other one is precipitation. So for precipitation, the best example will be VDRL. So VDRL is the best example for precipitation reaction. So this is the two broad or typical antigen antibody reactions. Either we will get agglutination or we will get precipitation. Now let us discuss in detail about precipitation reactions. So before discussing about precipitation reactions, let us know the complete spectrum of antigen antibody reactions. All right. So kindly write everyone types of antigen antibody reactions. So my today's topic will be types of antigen antibody reactions, and especially I will discuss about precipitation reactions. So kindly write types of antigen antibody reactions in a paper. Students in online, are you following me? Students in online.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. So write down
Yes,
the
sir.
types of antigen antibody reactions. Okay. So types
Done, sir.
of antigen antibody reactions. Antigen antibody reactions. Antigen antibody reactions. It is really challenging to write here. Okay, so first one is agglutination. First one is precipitation reactions. One, precipitation reactions. Precipitation reactions. Then two, precipitation, PRE. Spelling is here. Precipitation. Okay, so precipitation reactions. Then second one is agglutination reactions. Array. Let me write properly. Okay, second one is agglutination reaction. Okay, so second one is agglutination reaction. Agglutination reaction. Then third one is complement fixation test. Complement fixation tests. Third one is complement fixation test. That means these are the tests which involves complementary proteins. Okay, so third one is complement fixation tests. Then fourth one, neutralization tests, neutralization reaction or neutralization tests. Fourth one is neutralization tests. Then fifth one, very important. Fifth one is immunofluorescence tests.
लागलो सार जाके पूरे पैक झाड़ देली उड़ गेलो सार
Immunofluorescence tests. Fifth one is immunofluorescence tests.
लेके उड़ के कहते पैक ले
Kindly mute your mics. Immunofluorescence, FLUROSCENE. FLOROSCENE, immunofluorescence test. I will discuss about this later. Okay, so just remember the names. All these are very interesting things. I will discuss later. So kindly write it down. So fifth one is immunofluorescence tests. Then sixth one, radioimmunoassays, RIAs. Sixth one, radioimmunoassay, ASSAY. Radioimmunoassays. Then seventh one, very important. It is ELISA. Seventh one is ELISA. Yes, ELISA. Okay, ELISA. It is not Nima Mansa Ellis. Okay, ELISA. Is Nima joined in this session? I think not. Anyway, so seventh one is ELISA. Okay, so write down the full form of ELISA. The full form of ELISA is enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. ASSAY. Enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. And RAS stands for radio immunoassay. ASSY. Okay. So RAS stands for radio immunoassay, and the ELISA stands for enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So other than this ELISA, we have few more techniques such as immunochromatography, which you already discussed in the last semester. Immunochromatography. Seventh one is eighth one, very good. Eighth one is immunochromatography. Immunochromatography. See, I was very happy by seeing Mahir in the class today. Immunochromatography. Mahir is very good student. Eighth one is immunochromatography. Immunochromatography. Then ninth one. Ninth one is chemiluminescence test. Chemiluminescence test. CHEMI. Chemiluminescence test. LUMNI lumination. Okay, luminescence. LUMNINENCE. Okay, write it down. Chemiluminescence test. Then 10th one is coagglutination test. Coagglutinin tests. 10th one is coagglutinin tests. I will write the spelling. Conglutenin. CON. Conglutination tests.
Excuse me, sir.
GLUTINATION. Agglutination tests. Okay, so these are the different types of antigen antibody reactions.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Mr. Simon, please tell me.
Eric,
Yes, tell me, Eric.
please, sir, all this reaction we have to know.
Absolutely, you need to know. You need to know types of ELISA tests, types of radio immunoassay tests, types of immunofluorescent tests, types of precipitation, types of agglutination. Especially, you need to know these.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this
Yes.
this unit or
Absolutely important.
whole syllabus?
Anyway, get ready. Even precipitation itself, you have, we need at least 2 lectures to finish precipitations. Okay, we have many precipitation reactions and many agglutination reactions. Anyway, don't worry, it will be very interesting and very funny to listen. The classes will be really interesting if you're following me. Okay, kindly
sir.
follow the lectures. Then it will be interesting. Anyway, so these are the types of antigen antibody reactions. So once again, precipitation reactions, agglutination reactions, complement fixation, neutralization, immunofluorescent tests, radioimmunoassays, enzyme linked immunosorbent assays, immunochromatographic tests, chemiluminescence test, and conglutination tests. Okay, in the beginning I said only precipitation and agglutination, but we have other types also. Okay, so mostly we will use either precipitation reactions or agglutination reactions in the labs. Then we will go for higher, highly complicated tests like ELISA. ELISA is regularly used for your thyroid tests. Your most hormonal tests are based on ELISA only. So based on ELISA only, we will go for thyroid tests. And we have another interesting test called radioimmunoassay. Radioimmunoassay is especially used for detection of markers. Any cancer markers, any molecular markers will be detected by using this particular radioimmunoassay. And we have a specialized staining methods or specialized way of detecting molecular markers on the surface of pathogens by tagging with some immunofluorophores, and that technique is called immunofluorescent technique. For this we will use a specialized microscope called immunofluorescent microscope, or UV microscope will be used for immunofluorescent techniques. So these are the most commonly used antigen antibody reactions or tests. We have precipitation, agglutination, complement fixation, neutralization, immunofluorescence, radioimmunoassay, enzyme linked immunosorbent assays, immunochromatographic assays, chemiluminescence assays, and coagglutination assays. Even if you forgot all other things, I don't mind, but never forget the full form of ELISA. Very, very important. All externals will ask this full form. ELISA stands for enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Okay, is this clear for everyone, students? Students in online, is this clear? Shall I move
Yes, sir.
forward?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Sure,
Clear.
sir.
Yes. Now, before discussing about precipitation reactions, I will introduce a new concept called lattice hypothesis or prozone phenomenon. Now let us discuss about lattice hypothesis. So now I will discuss about lattice hypothesis. I think I'm already recording this session. Perfect. Okay. So now I will discuss about lattice hypothesis. So right side heading as lattice hypothesis. So right side heading as lattice, Lattice. Anuj, are you there, Anuj? Are you following me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perfect, Anuj. See, I'm happy. Your presence will make me happy. So lattice hypothesis. So now I will discuss about lattice hypothesis. Hypothesis, hypothesis, THESIS, thesis, lattice hypothesis. Don't worry about this one. I will make it as simple as I can. Now, let me give you one example, students. Listen. In order to have any reaction, both, I'm giving you very simple example. In order to visualize any reaction, we need same number of protons and neutrons, protons and electrons. For example, okay, I need 5 electrons and I need 5 protons so that they will merge each other and I will see a visible reaction. For example, okay, here I need 5 antigens and I need 5 antibody. So this 5 antigen and 5 antibody bind together properly and I will see proper reaction. I can able to visualize the reaction. If this you understand, now I will show you a schematic diagram. Kindly follow the schematic diagram and understand properly. So imagine there are 3 wells. Imagine there are 3 wells. So I am drawing 3 wells. So kindly stare into your mobiles. Very, very important concept. So I have 3 wells. So I have drawn 3 wells here. Okay. Yeah. So these are 3 wells. Now in these 3 wells, I have added a constant number of antibodies. For example, in all the 3 wells, I added 100 antibodies. 100 antibodies in this well. Okay. I have 100 antibodies in this well and 100 antibodies in the second well. 100 antibodies in the second well. Okay. Then 100 antibodies in third well. In third well. 100 antibodies in third well. Okay. I added antibodies to these 3 wells. Let me add antibodies now, hypothetically. So, okay. Okay. I added antibodies in it. Here. Okay. And I also added antibodies in this. So, in all the 3 containers, I have, let me keep it very simple, 2 antibodies representing 100. You just feel like they are 100. Okay. So, I will keep only 2 for easy purpose. So, in all 3 containers, I have same amount of antibodies. Okay. Now I will add antigens in increased concentration. Now I'm going to add antigens in these 3 wells. For example, let me take antigen. So here I added 1 antigen or 20 antigens, for example. So here in this well I added 20 antigens. Okay. Then in the second well I added 100 antigens. In the second well, I added 100 antigens. That means 100 antibodies and 100 antigens. Okay. So in the second well, I added 100 antigens. Okay. And in the third well, I added 150 antigens. In the third well, I added 150 antigens. That means here 1, here 2, and 1 more suspending in the air. I added 150 antigens in third well. So these are the green represents the antigen. So green color represents the antigen. Okay. Now tell me students, in which well I will see reaction. In which well I will see visual reaction? Tell me. In which well I have 100 to 100 antibodies and 100 antigens present in this well, right? In the middle
Yes.
well, how many antigens are there here? 100 antigens,
100 antigen.
right? And how many antibodies present in this well? 100 antibodies. That means
Same.
the number of antigens are equal to the number of antibodies. So
Antibody.
here I will see visual reaction. A nice visual reaction will be seen in this particular well. Okay. So in the middle well, in this well, I will see visual reaction. A visual reaction. SUAL, visual reaction. Okay. This particular well is called as zone of equivalence because there are equal amount of antigens and equal amount of antibodies. So that is why this particular phenomenon called zone of equivalence. This is called zone of equivalence. Zone of equivalence. This is called zone of equivalence. Zone of equivalence. EQUI. EQUIVALINCE. Okay, equivalence. Equivalence. Because in this particular well, the number of antigens and number of antibodies are same. So this particular zone is called as zone of equivalence. Now, let us see this particular well. In this well, how many antibodies present?
100.
100. And how many antigens present? Only 20, right?
20. Yeah.
So now let us try to keep this as a standard, zone of equivalence as a standard. Now this is called as, previous thing is called pro and after is called post. So this particular zone is called as pro zone. The first well can be said as pro zone. PRO, pro zone. So center one is zone of equivalence. So here this is called pro zone. Okay. So this is pro zone. And in the third well, antigens are more or antibodies are more in the third well. In the third well, what are more? Antigens are more, right? And this is called post zone. The third well is called as post zone. Post zone. Post zone. So center one is zone of equivalence. Okay, post zone. Now, I don't know whether you understood the significance or not. In the pro zone, is there antigens in the sample, in the patient sample? In the pro zone phenomenon, antigens there in the patient sample, right? And antibodies also there, specific antibodies are there. And they reacted. But are they visualized for us? No. In the pro zone, we have antigen and we have antibody, but we are unable to see it because there is no equal concentration. There is no equal concentration. Are you getting my point? Right? There is no equal concentration. That is why we didn't saw the reaction. So pro zone reaction will cause false negative tests. Because of this pro zone, we will get false negative tests. False negative will test. False negative will get because of pro zone phenomenon. False negative. We will give report as a negative because we didn't get any reaction. Since we didn't get any reaction, we will think that there is no antigen in the sample. So that is why there is no reaction and we will give it as a negative. But reality, there is antigen in the sample, but antigen is very less. That is why we didn't get reaction. Always we need to ensure this particular point, this particular problem in all serological tests. So what I can do is, for a serological test, what I will do is, I will take a standardized antigen. I will take standardized antigen wells. Instead of antibodies, I will take standardized antigens. For example, what I will do is, I need to, okay, in this case, I need to detect antibodies in the patient sample. I don't know whether patient has hepatitis antibodies or not. Now, what I will do, and I don't know the amount of antibodies in the patient sample. I don't know whether he has 10 antibodies or 20 antibodies or 100 antibodies. But I need to know that also. So what I will do is, I will take his antiserum sample and I will take a standardized antigen well. I will take standardized antigen well like some my positive control, maybe positive control, I need at least 500 antigens to say positive. The person has malaria, hepatitis or anything. Okay. So what I will do is, okay, I'm telling this diagram representing detection of antigen in the patient sample, not antibody. So let us try with antigen only. Once again, students in online, kindly pay attention. Are you listening me, students?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Listen to me. Pay attention.
Yes, sir.
I want to detect. Yeah. I want to detect hepatitis antigen in the patient sample. I want to detect hepatitis antigen in the patient sample. And in order to say he has hepatitis, I need at least 100 hepatitis antigens in the patient sample. If the viral load is more than 100, then I can say yes, he really has hepatitis infection. If it is less than 100, then it is not so subclinical infection. Subclinical infection means it will be recovered. Everyone will have all types of pathogens, but if their level is crossing at certain limit, then only we will say I have actual infection, right? So here hepatitis antigen should present greater than 100 in the patient sample to give positive result or to say positive for the infection. But I don't know how much antigen he has in the patient sample. I don't know. I collected his blood, but I don't know how much antigen present. He may have 20, he may have 50, or he may have 100, but I don't know. And I cannot see the reaction. So what I will do is, I will take the sample and I will dilute it. I will take the sample, maybe he has 500 antigens, but I will get reaction only at 100. So what I will do, I will dilute it. I will dilute serial dilution. I will take his serum and I will serially dilute it. Okay. In the serum you will have antigens. Okay. I will serially dilute. In the first tube I will have 500, and the second tube 400, third tube 3, 200 and 100. So I diluted the sample. Then I will take a standardized wells, already standardized well. All wells will have 100 antibodies. All wells have 100 antibodies. First I will add 500, first dilution, first test tube. In the first test tube I may have 500 antibodies. I will check, will I get reaction or not? I didn't get. That means 500 antigens not there. I will keep it as it. Then I will go with secondary and second dilution 400. I will see no reaction. I'm replacing 300 instead of 100 antibodies. I have 300 antibodies in the well. In the well I have 300 antibodies. 300 is my titer. Okay. I need at least 300 antigens in the patient sample. Okay. So what I will do is, my third dilution is 300 antigens, and I will add to the 300 antibody. See, don't remove Nishant. Why are you removing Nishant in the group, in that meetings? Students, I'm warning you. You're wasting my precious time. Listen here. I should not see this again. Okay, listen here, students, again. My problem is I need to detect, the case study is to detect, the problem is to detect antigens in patient sample, to detect antigens in sample. Everyone write it, then only you will understand. So the problem is to detect antigens in patient sample, and how many antigens, it should be more than 300. It should be more than 300 to say positive for infection. But I don't know how much antigens present in the patient sample. I don't know. So I received hepatitis patient sample. So this is hepatitis antigens. So I received patient antibodies in a test tube. Okay, antigens in a test tube. Then what I will do is, I will take standardized wells. In all these 3 wells, it has 300 antigens. In all these 3 wells, they have 300 antibodies. Sorry. So all wells have 300 antibodies. All 3 wells have 300 antibodies. Okay, all 3 wells have 300 antibodies. Now, what I will do is, I will take for example, let us assume patient has 500 antigens in his sample. Let us assume he has 500 antigens in his sample. Now what I will do is, I will do serial dilution. I will do serial dilution. I will take some 5 test tubes. Okay, I took some 5 test tubes, and in the first test tube it has 500 antigens, in the second test tube 400 antigens, in the third test tube 300 antigens, in the fourth 200 antigens. Okay, now I will add this 500 antigen suspension to my well. Will I get reaction? Will I get reaction here when I add 500 antigens to 500 antibodies to 300 antibodies? If I'm
Yes.
adding 500 antigens to 300 antibodies, will I get reaction?
Post
No,
equivalent.
sir.
I won't. Then here what happened?
No.
Antigen is excess compared to antibody. Then what type of zone it is? Post zone or pro zone? Post zone.
Pro
So
zone.
this is post zone. For example, this is post zone. Okay. So this is post zone. Then I will add the this one 400 suspension. Will I get reaction?
No, sir.
No, this is also post zone only. This is also post zone only. Then I added this third dilution tube to the third one. Okay. Here I will get zone of equivalence. Here I will see reaction. Here I will see reaction. Okay. Then I took 200 antigen in this sample. Will I get reaction? Prozone will happen here. I won't see reaction, right? Usually the way we will add is from lower concentration to higher concentration. It is not from higher to lower. Then prozone will be the first one. Then you will get post zones. First I will add the highest dilution to the lowest, the lowest dilution to the highest dilution. If that is the case, first we will get prozone, then we will get zone of equivalence, then we will get post zone phenomenon. Now this zone of equivalence, in zone of equivalence we got the number of antigens are equivalent to the number of antibodies. So that is called zone of equivalence. And it is the area where we will see reaction. And this particular reaction area is called as titer. This is called titer. I don't know whether you know this concept of titer or not. In the immunology we will know. Anyway, this zone of equivalence is called as titer. Write it down. T-I-T-E-R. Okay? Titer. T-I-T-E-R. Titer. Zone of equivalence is called as titer. That means in the titer we will see the reaction. The first time reaction we saw at this particular concentration at 300. So that will be the titer. Okay, zone of equivalence is also called as titer. For example, okay, now let me give you some examples. For example, syphilis. The syphilis titer will be 20. I think 200. This is the titer for syphilis. I think 105 or something like that. Okay, for example, in the kit itself they will give titer is 20. So that means at least at 20 we should get reaction. At least at 20 dilution we should get reaction. If we are not getting reaction at 20 means that indicates it is negative only. So titer will really help us in understanding the serological test. I will discuss this titer in the future classes. But as of now, just imagine, just keep in mind prozone phenomenon. Prozone phenomenon is very helpful for identifying false positive and false negative tests. So false positive and false negative tests can be identified easily by this prozone phenomenon, especially false positive tests. So false positive tests can be easily detected by prozone phenomenon. So, right, because simply after adding antigen, if you are not getting reaction means that doesn't mean patient does not have antigens. He have antigens, but they are less concentration. That way we got negative. Then we need to increase the titer. We need to go for even more further dilutions. Then you need to add another sample after diluting it. After you are trying with all dilutions, if you are not getting reaction, then that is correct. Okay. So at one particular point you will get this reaction. This is called titer. Zone of equivalence is called titer. And this approach of doing serological test is called as quantitative testing. This approach of testing serological tests are called as quantitative tests. These are called as quantitative tests. Write it down. Quantitative tests. For quantitative tests, we will do like this. This is the procedure of quantitative tests. Quantitative tests. Other than quantitative tests, we have another test which is called rapid tests. In case of rapid test, we need not to bother about zone of equivalence. No matter whatever concentration antigen we are adding, we will get reaction. In rapid test, we will get reaction at any concentration. In rapid test, we will get reaction at any concentration. But for quantitative, we must get reaction. We will get only reaction at zone of equivalence. For quantitative, we will get reaction only at zone of equivalence. But for rapid tests, we will get reaction at any phase of the reaction. Okay, so that's it. Broadly, these serological tests will be two types, students. One will be rapid and other one will be quantitative test. So what we will do is, for example, listen to me, you will get an idea. You will get one idea. For malaria, I need at least 100 antigens in the patient sample. At least I need 100 antigens to say that the patient has malaria. Okay. Now, randomly I will take patient sample. In the randomly, he may have some 20 antigens. We don't know how many antigens he has. So first what I will do is, I will do rapid test. When I'm performing rapid test, what will happen? Rapid test will give result for any
Positive test.
concentration. So in the rapid test, I got malaria positive. But if he has only 20 antigens, then that is not significant. Even though he has malaria, but that is not at all malaria. I need at least 100 malaria antigens to say he has disease. Now I need to know whether he has 100 antigens, 100 molecules of antigens, malaria antigens in the sample or not. For that, I will proceed with quantitative testing. In quantitative testing, I will get the result. I will get the titer. I will check with titer whether my titer is above 100 or not. If my titer is above 100, then I confidently I can give report. Yes, the patient has malaria. So both rapid and quantitative test we should do side by side. If in rapid test we got negative, means we can write negative. But if we got positive in rapid test, means definitely we should go for quantitative test to identify the titer. Is this clear for everyone? I hope you got some confusions here, right? Any confusion in rapid and quantitative test? No? Complicated. Listen once again. Listen, students. For example, patient has malaria. Okay, patient has malaria, but that is okay. How can I say? Okay, you just tell me, students. One malaria parasite entered into my blood in one case, and in another case 100 malaria parasites entered into my blood. When I will develop fever? In 100 malaria or in one malaria? In 100
One
malaria
malaria,
only I will
sir.
get
One
actual
one
fever,
malaria.
right? Now listen, when I took one malaria blood sample and when I perform rapid test, will I get positive reaction or not? In one malaria sample, rapid test it will give result for any types of
Positive.
concentration. Keep in mind,
Positive.
in rapid test we will get reaction for any type of any volume of sample. So in rapid test, if I perform for me one malaria sample, if I perform rapid test, I will get positive. Right? Now I will go for quantitative test. In the quantitative, I will detect whether I have 200 malaria or not. Will I get 200 malaria in quantitative? Will I get a reaction for 200? I won't get a titer. My titer is 200. I already kept 200 antibody in my titer in the well. So in the quantitative, I won't get reaction. I will get negative in quantitative. That means I am negative for malaria only. Having one malaria doesn't mean I have infection. I need at least 100 malaria to say I have infection. Even in quantitative test, if you got positive means, then it will be actual infection. You cannot rely on rapid test alone. You should go for quantitative test to give positive result. Yes. Is it clear for everyone? I think this is somewhat complicated.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Clear, right? Clear or not? Tell me,
Yes, sir.
Anuj.
Clear, sir.
Clear, right? Yeah. The problem with rapid is rapid will give result for any concentration. It can be one malaria sample or 100 malaria sample. I will get positive. But a true malaria should have more than 100. That more than 100 can be detected by quantitative test only. So after performing rapid test, I must perform quantitative test to see the titer. Titer means 100. If it is greater than titer, then positive. If it is less than titer, in the quantitative, my I got result only at 40. That is negative only. I need at least 100 molecules of malaria to say actual infection, right? So that is why we will perform both rapid test and quantitative test in the labs. In the rapid, if you got positive means we will go for quantitative. In the quantitative, we will check the titer. If titer is greater than the value, the titer value will be given by the reagent kit. Okay, the company to company and the test to test, the titer value will change. So if the value is greater than the titer value, then it is true positive test. In order to know the titer, you must know the concept of Prozone phenomenon. And this is all about Prozone phenomenon. And why we are doing Prozone? Prozone will give false negative test. So in order to overcome this false negative problems, we need to dilute the sample. So in all quantitative tests, we will dilute the sample to identify the actual zone of equivalence. For identifying that zone of equivalence only, we will dilute the samples. If you are doing actual practical exams, then you will understand these things. Usually we will dilute the serum sample and we will do the test. Why we are diluting? To find the zone of equivalence of that particular test or to identify the titer of the test. So this is all about lattice hypothesis. Then what is this lattice hypothesis? Means very simple, students. In zone of equivalence, so these are antigens. You can think these as antigens. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 antigens, and in the test sample I will have 5 antibodies. So I will have 5 antibodies. So antibodies will bind like this. It will form a lattice. It will form a structure, a lattice-like structure. Okay. So they will form lattice. So that is why this concept is also called as lattice hypothesis, since they are forming lattices, a lattices like structures. So that is why this is also called lattice hypothesis. Or the scientist that discovered this particular phenomenon, his name is Marak. The scientist who discovered this concept is called as, his name is Marak, M-A-R-R-A-C. That is why this hypothesis is also called as Marak hypothesis. Marak hypothesis, lattice hypothesis, or Prozone phenomenon, everything is same. Is this clear for everyone? Lattice hypothesis clear for everyone, and you understand why we are diluting the samples, right? We are diluting the samples in order to identify the zone of equivalence. If we are not diluting the sample, we may give false positive test, right? Because he has antigen, but he didn't react it. That is why we will think that it is false positive. In order to overcome these problems, we need to dilute the sample and we will check at what concentration we got the reaction. And that is called zone of equivalence, or it is also called as Prozone phenomenon, or it is also called Marak hypothesis, or it is also called lattice hypothesis, right? Is this concept clear for everyone, students in online? Anuj, do you understood this concept? Anuj?
Yes, sir.
I'm really happy, Anuj. Perfect. Shall I move on to the precipitation tests now? Now I will move on to the precipitation tests. 10 minutes more. Do you have any other class after this? No class, right? I will continue then. I will take up to 4:30. Get ready. Huh?
Sir, we have class.
Anyway, I won't mind it. Okay, listen. Now precipitation reactions. Okay, write down the precipitation reactions. Everyone, please note down the precipitation reactions. Please.
सर कल पढ़ाइएगा आप.
Are yaar, keep quiet, students. Precipitation reactions. So listen, precipitation reactions. Ushi, are you there in online?
आई रहने दीजिए सर.
Sir, unmute your mic, sir.
Someone is removing, sir. हेलो शाहरुख.
सर हाँ बोलो.
सर को बोल यार, कोई हटा रहा है बार बार, कर रहा है, क्या हो रहा है?
कोई कुछ नहीं कर सकता यार, रिमूव कर रहे तो.
अरे यार ये भी बात है.
सर अनम्यूट योर माइक सर.
सर को सुनाई नहीं दे रहा लग रहा, मतलब सुनाई तो दे रहा, सर को पता नहीं है, अनम्यूट म्यूट हो गया.
पता है सर को. मुझे बोल चुप होने
Mute
के लिए।
your mic, sir.
अनुज तो स्टेटस लगा रहा बार बार।
Yes, I unmuted my mic. Can you hear now?
Yes sir, someone is removing sir. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Yes.
See, if you do like this, it will be really challenging. You are. Please wait. I
Sir,
see
offline
sometimes
classes
these
कब से start
problems.
हो रही sir?
I can't say anything. Yeah.
Sir,
That is-
offline classes कब से start हो रही है?
They're hacking my computer. Please wait, students. I have problem with my laptop. Just wait. I'm unable to see anything on my laptop. Just wait. Okay. Meanwhile, write down. So precipitation reactions. Keep a side heading as precipitation reactions. We have two types of precipitation reactions. So keep like this. So PPT and then other two. Okay. Sub branch 2. We have two types of precipitation reactions. One, precipitation reaction. Okay. Then second one, flocculation reaction. Precipitation reaction only. In precipitation, the first one is precipitation reaction only. Second one is flocculation reaction. Kindly write it down properly. Okay. Second one is flocculation. FLOCCULATION. Flocculation reaction. Flocculation reaction. I will discuss about the difference between precipitation and flocculation. Before that, you just tell me the definition of precipitation reaction. In precipitation reaction, what type of antigen will involve? Is it soluble antigen or particulate antigen?
Soluble sir.
Soluble antigen, right? So soluble antigen will participate in precipitation reaction. So kindly write down the definition of precipitation reaction. Write down the definition for precipitation reaction. Okay. Definition of precipitation reaction. Okay. Just a second. I was opening my. So the definition of precipitation reaction is when a soluble antigen, write the definition, when a soluble antigen, kindly wait for some time, students. I mean, I'm facing a problem with my PowerPoint. Just write down the definition. So the definition is when a soluble antigen,
Yes, sir. When a soluble antigen.
when a soluble antigen reacts with its antibody, when a soluble antigen reacts with its antibody in the presence of electrolytes, within the bracket NaCl. In the presence of electrolytes within the bracket NaCl, yet an optimum temperature and pH, at an optimal temperature and pH, it will form an insoluble complex. It will form an insoluble complex called precipitation. It will form an insoluble complex called precipitation. An insoluble complex called precipitation. So a quick revision of definition. So precipitation means when a soluble antigen reacts with its antibody in the presence of electrolyte at an optimal temperature and pH, it forms an insoluble complex called precipitation. Is this definition clear? I think definition looks quite challenging for you to understand. Let me show it as a pictorial representation of the definition. So here we have a soluble antigen. That means a small antigen. So you have good biceps, Mahir. You need not to show off. Okay, so we have a soluble antigen. Okay, so we have a soluble antigen. Okay, so we have a soluble antigen. This soluble antigen will bind with, this soluble antigen will bind with an antibody. Okay, don't worry, I'm not scolding you. Okay, this soluble antigen will bind with an antibody, okay, to form insoluble complex. They will form insoluble complex. They will form insoluble complex. Please write down this picture. Insoluble complex. They will form insoluble complex. This insoluble complex is called as precipitation. Okay, this insoluble complex is called as precipitation. At what are the requirements for this insoluble complex? This will happen at constant temperature, at optimal temperature, pH and NaCl, in the presence of NaCl. This is the definition of a precipitation reaction. Okay, so just to see the definition now, when a soluble antigen reacts with its antibody in the presence of NaCl, then it will form insoluble complex at optimum temperature and pH, and it is called as precipitation reaction. That's it. Is it clear for everyone? When a soluble antigen binds with its antibody in presence of NaCl, forms insoluble complexes, which is precipitation, at optimum temperature and pH, is called as precipitation reaction. Is this definition clear for everyone, dear students, online students? Is this definition clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Then shall I continue or shall I continue later? Later, right? This will be challenging. So in my next lecture, I will discuss about in detail about precipitation reaction. Actually, we have two types of precipitation reactions. We have one precipitation reaction and we have immunodiffusion reactions. In immunodiffusion reactions, we have normal immunodiffusion reactions and electroimmunodiffusions. In normal immunodiffusion reactions, we have one dimension. One single diffusion in one dimension reactions, double diffusion in one dimension reactions, single diffusion in double diffusion reactions, double diffusions in double dimension reactions, and immunoelectrophoresis. Then we have reactions in two types: counter immunoelectrophoresis and rocket electrophoresis. So all these things must be clear, need to be covered by my next lecture. Okay, so get ready for precipitation reactions. So
its
as of
reaction
now,
detectors.
thank you very much. So a quick revision of today's lecture. In today's lecture, we discussed about lattice hypothesis and precipitation reactions. So lattice hypothesis, before that we discussed about types of antigen antibody reactions. We have precipitation reactions, agglutination reactions, complement fixation tests, neutralization tests, immunofluorescence tests, radioimmunoassay, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay or ELISA. Then we have immunochromatographic techniques, chemiluminescence techniques, and coagglutination reactions. Then we discussed about the lattice hypothesis. According to lattice hypothesis, the number of antigens should be equal to the number of antibodies to see a visible reaction, and that reaction can only occur at zone of equivalence. In prozone, okay, just tell me one thing. In prozone, what are excess in nature in prozone?
Antibody.
Yes, you need to write this one also. Yes, instead of, yes, you need to write. Nishant and Mahir, please stay quiet. Okay. Prozone is also called as like this. In some textbooks, they are saying as zone of antibody excess. Sometimes prozone, they will write it as instead of prozone, they will say zone of antibody excess. Obviously, in prozone, antibody will be more. So in prozone, antibodies will be excess. So this is also called as zone of antibody excess. Then in the post zone of antigen excess. In the post zone of antigen excess. Okay, post zone we will have more antigens, right? So this is how that happens, and in case of prozone we will get false positive tests. So in order to overcome that false negative test, we need to do the dilution of the samples. So that is all about the prozone, significance of prozone, and why we are getting that visible reaction, because formation of lattices among the antigens and antibodies. So that is why it is also called lattice hypothesis, and this concept was introduced by Merak. So that is why it is also called as Merak hypothesis, right? Then I discussed about the definition of precipitation reaction. So precipitation reaction means when a soluble antigen binds with its antibody in the presence of NaCl. It will form insoluble complexes, which are precipitations, in the presence of constant temperature and pH. It is called as precipitation reaction. In my next lecture, I will discuss in detail about precipitation reactions. Thank you very much for your patience in this class.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more clarifications you need in this lecture? No,
Sir,
right?
something Anuj.
Shall I end this lecture? Shall I end this class? Deepak, can I end this class?
No, sir,
No,
not
Any
really,
doubts?
sir.
no.
You will get doubts in the future class. Okay, please preserve your doubts for today alone. Okay, we can discuss later. Thank you very much, students. You can leave. Everyone can leave now. Yes, you too can leave. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually,